Welcome back to the Business of Feedback. I'm Bandy, CMO at Alchemer, and we have a great topic today and a great guest. Jove Oakley, Alchemer's CFO, is joining me today, and we're going to get all into how to get CFOs to buy into CX programs, because this is something our customers struggle with, right? How to get a CFO to understand the value of customer experience, fund the budget that's required to do that, and I think maybe just simply align on metrics. And you have experience on both sides of this, right? You work for a company that delivers CX software, and you are a fantastic CFO. So I think you're going to share great things with us.
I'm super excited.
Good. So maybe let's start with a lot of CFOs. Maybe this isn't fair, but they just don't get CX, right? They just see it as another cost, right? Another line item that needs to be funded. You have a different perspective, I think. So tell us maybe what has changed your perspective on CX and investing in customer experience.
Yeah, well, I think I get the benefit of working for a company that's focused on CX and customer experience. And so every day we talk about how these programs can move the needle in terms of the metrics that I care most about. And I would say, like, every CFO today is tasked more and more with the responsibility of, not just closing the books in the traditional finance roles, but actually driving the business forward. So, like, there's a lot out there of how the CFO role has morphed into the CFO COO role over time. And the things everyone is spending time on are how do we retain customers? How do we grow the top line? And then how do we do that all profitably? Yeah. So those are the three pillars of, I think, what most people in my role are spending their day on. The things that are core to CX are the things that CFOs care about. But I think the biggest problem is they're living in silos where they're not bringing those things together on a daily basis, and they're not tying those programs that are designed to drive retention, customer growth, customer health to the metrics that CFO is paying attention to. And so I think the problem when CFOs don't value CX programs is those companies have not tied them to the business outcomes that matter the most.
I love that. So one of the business outcomes we hear our customers talking about wanting to influence is lifetime value, LTV. So tell us about how we should connect CX programs to LTV.
Yeah, so I think LTV is a really interesting metric. It's one of those metrics like CAC,
cost of acquisition, just in case,
that is a compound metric and is really an outcome, right? Your lifetime value is an outcome that you can talk to your board or your investors about. I think it's made up of a number of components that are things that businesses drive. So LTV is made up of how many new customers you're getting, how large are those customers, how much can you grow them over time, and then how long can you keep them? What's your retention rate? And I think it's really important in terms of operationalizing a metric that you focus on the subcomponents or the things that are controllable by operational teams within the business. So what we focus on is not what our LTV is as just a metric, but we focus on how do we improve retention, how do we grow customers, how do we land and then expand over time, how do we get recurring business, and then how do we get more and more new customers into that funnel. So
I love that because obviously growth and retention tied directly to great customer experience, right? Those are obvious. I think a lot of our more successful customers have also figured out how do they market their great customer experience, right? And use that to differentiate them. So that then ties into new customers as well. One of the things our customers most commonly start with, right, when they're going to build a CX program is NPS, right? So NPS or CSAT. How do you recommend tying your NPS program to a financial outcome?
Yeah, so NPS in itself is just a trended line, right? It's how do your customers perceive you? I think the key is, and where you run into a lot of challenges, is correlating that with outcomes. So from my perspective, I think the best thing, and we try to do this, is first have an objective, right? So what is your baseline for NPS? Where are you at? ideally, like what we like to do is also use structured and unstructured data, right? So like not just what is our NPS score, but what are those customers telling us about their experience in terms of interacting with us. And then within that set of that unstructured feedback, what can we do to improve that experience and what is our expected outcome? So if I'm a retailer, is that more same-store visits? If I'm a SaaS business, is that a higher renewal rate or better long-term expansion? And I think the key is just to pick that business outcome that you're trying to influence and then consistently correlate your NPS to that outcome. Now it's sometimes hard to like directly tie it, but you can drive really strong correlation and show cause and effect over time. So I think that's what often happens. That's what needs to happen. That's missing is people will come to a board meeting and just present that their NPS line is up and to the right, but they're not presenting what they did to do that and then what they were trying to affect, and did that metric move.
I think maybe an example of that is we've done work on our NPS and identified that we have our promoters and obviously they love us. We don't have to worry about churn risk so much with that group. We have detractors, which we've found don't really actually churn that often, but it's that neutral category. And so I think what I hear you saying is, hey, we could take our neutral category and then tell you how we're going to move the needle to move them up, hopefully move them up as a promoter. We don't really want them to go into the detractor column, but what would the value to the business be if we did that, and how could we do that? Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, exactly. Like we did a project here where we found our neutral NPS responders had the lowest retention rate, which was sort of counterintuitive.
Sure.
Right? Generally, the detractors, they were mad about something, but they were mad because they were really reliant on us, and we need to address those issues. But in terms of impacting the business, the biggest opportunity was neutral. And so what we highlighted was, one, we could highlight who was at risk of churning or contracting, and we could put tactics and plans in place within the CSM teams to impact those customers, and we could directly measure. One, we could project what a 1% or 2% impact to that group would drive business-wise, and then we could measure back how effective we were at achieving that outcome.
Yeah. So one, we're really fortunate because you're our CFO and you have a great team that did that analysis for us. But, truthfully, like it's a great place for most of our customers to start, right? And looking at those different buckets and what the customers in those buckets are doing. So let's maybe jump ahead to, I have a proposal for my new CX program and I like some additional resources. As I put this business case together, what financial metrics are you looking for from me in this business case to give me the green light? Yeah,
I guess I would say, so your kind of question is like, how do I get my project approved, right? Like how do I get through what it feels like a lot of no's to a yes? So I think the first thing I would say is the finance team or whoever within your organization who is sort of like managing business outcome has a bunch of things they're trying to achieve. And like actually knowing what they're working on is really, really important, right? So is the next year, is it super critical that renewal rate goes up or same store visits? Like what are the metrics that team is super focused on? What are they talking to the executive teams about? What are they talking to their boards and investors about? So the first thing I would say is get to know your finance team and figure out what problems they're trying to solve and which one of those problems relate to your project. I think that's the first step.
So I want to pause there because I think, and hopefully you can keep your thought there.
I can.
I actually think that is really counterintuitive to probably what a lot of us have done historically, right? We go off and we're like, wow, we know we have this group of customers that are unhappy. How do we go and make them happy? Or, we know we get a lot of complaints about in-store returns. And so we're going to focus in on that moment in the journey and how are we going to fix that? But I think what I just heard you say is where I should start is, hey, finance team,
or
what are we...
COO or whoever's responsible.
But what are we trying to achieve and prove? And what are the metrics that you're measuring or using to prove that? And then I should go, okay, where does customer experience fit in that?
Yeah, I think if you're like a company who is standing this up, if you have a well-established program, it has set objectives.
Yeah.
But like you've got a new project you're trying to launch, like I would get aligned in terms of the outcomes and objectives of that project with whoever you're trying to sell it to. Because now you're a partner of mine and you're trying to help me solve my problem versus bringing unbudgeted or unplanned spending that I don't understand.
Yep. Okay, so I want you to keep going, right?
Okay.
So that's sort of the first in that, like, hey, I'm making a business case. So first step is go get with my finance partners and understand what's important to them.
Yeah.
What's next?
So I think, what's really helpful for me is the first thing we said. One, what are we trying to fix or improve or achieve with this? And if it's something I really care about, that's, you've got my attention and your success probability is much higher. The second thing is, how are we going to measure that success? So what are you going to give me? And I think some people think everything has to happen within a year or within a budget cycle. And it doesn't necessarily. Like, we approve long-term projects all the time. But what you need to do then is say, hey, listen, this is going to pay off over time. The outcome will be this, but you're going to be able to measure success. You're going to be able to measure how I'm doing based on these other sub-metrics or this other approach. So it might be ultimately you're going to drive retention up, but the thing you're going to see first is NPS improving or negative, open text comments dropping or comments about this region declining over time. Ultimately, that'll drive this. But you should expect to see these three things first. So tell me how you're going to measure your success, right? Tell me where you're going to get to, and then tell me how you're going to get to where I care about. And it doesn't have to happen overnight.
Yeah.
It can happen over time as long as I know you're getting to where we need to be. That's like step two.
I love that, right? Bite-sized measurement versus, I don't know, what's the phrase, boiling the ocean by signing up to improve retention. Like, that's a big,
and I think
if I can show you, hey, I'm going to measure this piece,
Yeah.
which we can align on as a means to retention.
Yeah, and I think people often just say, hey, we'll sell more if we do all this. And then it's like, did we sell more? Did we not sell more? How do I know that you drove any of this?
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, maybe my program was great, but the sales team also got better that quarter.
How do I separate out?
Sure,
Like you have to create a path that demonstrates your project is impacting those results. So that's step two. The other thing I really look at is that, hey, I evaluated the landscape of opportunities. So we hit the first part, which is like, I care about driving the top line and I care about a return on those investments. So, if you're going to give me in a year, you're going to more than pay off your investment. That's super easy. If you need 3 years, I'm going to be looking to drive 3 to 4 times what you're going to invest in that project over that lifetime. Right? So I'm looking like a 4x return over that period. I also want to see that you've considered the cost of the program. Okay. And so, like, have you evaluated the vendors? Are you doing this as cost effectively as you can?
So let's talk a little bit about maybe not vendor evaluation, but that's a part of understanding the total.
Or TCO.
Yes, exactly. That's where I'm going. So when vendor evaluation, and I think there's probably multiple parts here, but like that's part of the total cost of your program. So when somebody comes to you with a CX program, what are the components of kind of that cost that you're looking for?
I'm looking to understand, what the opportunity cost is. So who's working on it? Like, what are the teams not doing versus doing this? I'm looking at obviously tools and contractors or whatever like hard costs there are, and how do those impact our run rate spending long term?
Yep.
Those are like really the primary components, and then looking like at, like we said earlier, like how quickly do we start to get to returns? And I generally find like the projects that go through, like I said, the projects that are really easy for me to approve are like, I know already what they're trying to accomplish, and it's something I care about. They've really laid out a path where I can understand how to measure success and how to hold them accountable and how to ultimately get to where we be. And then I can tell that they've considered the profitability or the overall cost of that project.
And it sounds like time frame of that.
And the time frame of that, and that they're cognizant that, it can't just be an unlimited budget for these things. They've actually they've looked to go optimize both the outcome and the return on that project. Those are really easy to prove. And like when it's packaged up like that, then I have a lot of faith in that team that's delivering it. And it's a lot easier to approve.
I mean, I would love unlimited budget, and I keep asking you for it, but you keep saying no. So at least now I know I got to come to you with those 3 things, and I'll have a better chance. I mean, we've talked a little bit, I think, about this question already, but like CX programs do take time, right? We are, in a lot of cases, trying to not only change the customer's impression of us, but like there's a business process behind that. So I heard you say you're open to a longer maybe period of time for that. What's the right balance there, do you think?
I think you need to show, like a lot of projects are measured over 2 to 3 years. Like that's a very reasonable long-term project time frame. I think, again, you can't go a year without showing some progress.
Sure.
You can't go a full budget cycle without, demonstrating that something is impacting the business in a positive way. And I think that's where a lot of people run into issues is, one, it's like, you've got a program that's too heavy and it's too hard to stand up, and everyone has good intentions, and you get it off the ground. It's budgeted in January, it launches in June, it gets live in August, and when the budget comes back around, you spent, $1 million and it's just getting going. And those are really easy targets when you need to reallocate resources, right? Because part of my job is every year looking at resources and saying, where can we deploy those to drive the biggest outcome? And so I think getting up quickly and getting moving, and then having bite-sized, like you said, bite-sized outcomes that you can report back on help sort of set that stage.
In this conversation, whether it's within the business case or outside of it, how interested are you in future use cases? So, for example, today we might be starting a program and it's going to be like, look, we're just going to get an NPS off the ground this year and like do that well and get some baseline. But with this tool in house, HR can use it for employee engagement, and product's also going to be able to use it over here for this other thing. And within customer experience, we will add, these other things in future years. How interested are you in that kind of multiple use cases kind of thing?
So I think if I boil that down to like a tool selection, what I care about when we're selecting tools is that they're scalable. So what I don't want to do is end up with a giant stack of overlapping capabilities, whatever that is, right? And so if we're adding a new tool or I'm replacing a tool, I want to make sure it covers all the potential use cases. I'm not necessarily concerned that those need to go live. Whatever the initial investment we're making, I want that to be covered by whatever the initial use case is.
Got it.
But I don't want to pick a tool that's just a single point solution that I now need either go replace in a year or add on 3 more tools. It's because it's never an efficient spend profile when you have multiple sort of like slightly overlapping tools. So I care about it, but it doesn't have to be a big bang thing. It just needs to have the capability to do what we need it to do over time.
I'm going to take us on a different path.
Okay.
A lot of our customers tend to fall into 2 different types of CX programs. One that's maybe run within a department, right? So, marketing is going to own a lot of CX initiatives, and they're going to go do our NPS study and our brand study, and they're going to go do these things, all kind of run within that department. We have other customers that have maybe an organization-wide CX team, and they're trying to run CX initiatives across those teams. Truthfully, in both cases, CX does need cross-company collaboration, right? Like I'm limited on what I can do without working with product and without working with the customer success team. How, just as a strategic executive in the business, how do you guide people coming to you for investment to also recognize you can't do this on your own, right? Like if I said, Jove, I need $100,000 to go run this program, would you say to me, cool, but you have to get somebody else to sign off too? And I ask partially because, again, most of our customers are not executives, right?
Yeah.
They don't always have insight into the initiatives of other teams. But as a CFO, you do.
Yeah. I think, again, if people come to me with like a joint problem we're trying to solve, then I can help provide that guidance in terms of who needs to be involved.
Yeah.
So if I'm invested in it, I'm going to help clear the path to making that team successful. And that means helping get other resources across functions aligned. Then like that's something I can do.
Yeah.
That's often hard for somebody that lives within a function to do. And so again, I think the best path there is have that honest conversation, like that pre-conversation. Don't make it a budget discussion, make it a business outcome discussion. And your CFO or your head of finance or your COO is gonna use their resources to help you be successful.
I love that. I love the concept of make it a business outcome, not a budget decision. I would love an example of when you've been surprised by maybe the value of CX.
I think like sort of tying insights, so tying CX information, structured, unstructured, when we've really done that successfully to business outcomes or to business metrics, sort of you're the example you said, which is like, hey, passives are the biggest opportunity within a business. I think anytime we've done that successfully, we've found information that has been maybe not what I expected to be the outcome, but provide us a clear direction, right? And we've done other projects in terms of like analyzing our sales process, like pre-close sales processes where we use OTA and structured feedback and measure win rates or things that I care about against those. And I would say I'm almost always maybe a little bit surprised about what we find. There's always something I didn't expect buried within that information that's almost always actionable.
I mean, I think that's my favorite thing about customer feedback is it is always surprising.
Yeah.
You think you know, you have no idea. Okay, I have maybe 2 more questions. Okay. Let's talk about AI because everybody's talking about AI. Just generally, as a CFO, what is your thought or attitude around AI and investing in AI tools? And well, maybe I'll start there.
Yeah, I think for me, what's like the most relevant in terms of AI is the ability to synthesize information and actually get to like findings that are not just, surface level. Yeah. So historically what you've needed to do is you've had to take a bunch of data that you've collected and then you either have somebody on your team who has the capabilities to analyze that and actually like come to business outcomes or come to conclusions about it and recommendations, or you got to take it to a partner in finance or a partner within business intelligence and have them tell you what it says.
Use their analysts to get the answer.
And so what we see with our tools and with other tools that we use in other parts of our stack is that I'm a lot more comfortable with the conclusions that other operational divisions or functions are coming to, right? And it's really pretty accurate in terms of what those outcomes or those findings are telling them, right? And so it saves a huge amount of time and a lot of cycles in terms of people having to wait in a line to get answers from a small number of people within the organization. So that's super powerful. And I think it's like very democratic, I guess, in terms of all of a sudden it pushes power across the organization, whereas you might have had this small group of people that were the only people that could come to conclusions that anyone would believe, right? And so I think it allows other organizations to actually handle the things and the projects and the outcomes that they're trying to drive and like come to those same conclusions. So that's super, super valuable. The other place that it's been very valuable is, and we use it in a lot of different areas of the technology stack in the business, is getting synthesized or summary information about things that I care about. Whether that's like deal summaries or what's happening in a process, I can now get a view of what's happening without having to schedule a meeting with somebody or get a bunch of people in a room and talk about it. And so I think it provides me insight into areas of the business and allows me to be less disruptive to like day-to-day operations.
How has it changed? Because you are one of the final approvers of most of our technology investments, right? So when marketing wants a new platform, when product wants a new platform, whoever wants a new platform, right? It ultimately is coming through you. Have you changed sort of your requirement in those platforms? Are you asking about AI, and if it includes AI for both hey, tools should now have some kind of AI in it, and also, hey, is there a security concern here, right?
Yeah.
So like, has that started to enter your evaluation criteria?
Yeah, our IT and IS teams, our InfoSec teams are very focused on the security side of that. So, is this tool using proprietary models? Is it using public models?
Yeah.
What are they doing with our data? So that's definitely an impact or a factor that we're considering. I think people often miss the what's in it for me factor for whoever's approving it. And I would say most of the tools that I never question the budgets on are tools that I have a dashboard that shows me things I care about every day.
Yeah.
And it's something that I open up, if it's not every day, every other day, to check some sort of metric or something. It gives me access to things. And so I think, AI is a huge component of that, like in terms of summarization, but I wouldn't undervalue the fact of like, does this tool have something I can give to my executive or whoever my sponsor is that allows them to get to information that they care about without having to ask anybody. So can I give them something they're gonna open up at least once a week and engage with? And if those tools will be very important across the business.
So if I bring us full circle back to where we started with, hey, I got to make a business case to ultimately the CFO to get my CX program approved, there should be a component of that that says, hey, by the way, it has AI in it. Here's what that enables me to do, right? Save time, get to the insights faster, more accurate insights, the kind of savings piece of it. But there should also be something in my story that's like, hey, and by the way, you're going to get access to these insights too. Yes. Right?
So you're going to be able to access this information that you've cared about. The things that I report to you are going to be at your fingertips, and you can look at it whenever you want. And you can dig into it in a super easy way. And oh, by the way, it's secure and safe, and we're not exposing our private information.
All right. So last question. We have all these CX professionals, right? Managers, senior managers, directors, VPs out there watching this, and they're like, okay, this is all great. What is your one piece of advice for them as a CFO?
In terms of getting their CX programs deployed?
Maybe just generally, I don't know. Yeah. You take it, Jove.
I would say, find a partner in that team.
Yeah.
Find a partner in the CFO org. They care about the same things you care about. And
or start caring about the things they care about.
Or start caring about the things they care about. Spend time with them and understand what things they're concerned about and what things they're tasked with driving.
Yeah. And I suspect it's not going to be NPS.
It will not be. I think NPS is a means to an end.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Because again, we're going to focus on business outcomes, not just the budget. Jove, thank you.
Thank you very much.
This has been fantastic. We have put together, I think, some really great tips for people to go make their business case to a CFO. So, they've got to understand what matters to the finance team, because ultimately that's what matters to the business. They're gonna have a long-term goal, but they're gonna figure out what are the bite-sized metrics to show progress, and then most importantly, right, what's the profitability of the program? So understanding the total cost of the program and that kind of investment timeline.
Yep.
And I think with that, they're going to go get some money to run big, successful programs. Thanks for joining us on the Business of Feedback. Jove, thank you, for joining us. This was so insightful, and I know will be really valuable.
Thank you.